Thank you. Thanks for joining us here. We've got Bernie, Darcy, and Mike, and I will allow you each to introduce yourselves. But these are tried and true veteran GCs that have worked in the Valley as medtech GCs for many years, and they are very intelligent and amazing people. Mike and I go skiing every winter together, for example. We have I'm just pre-selling a little bit of a program we're going to have in Snowbird again, which some people in our office described as like a junket, if whatever that means. But we actually have a very lively conversation about issues like we described today with the folks from Salt Lake. There's quite a rich biotech and medtech industry actually in Salt Lake City. I think Charlie wants you to, oh, your mic, okay. So just to pre-sell a little bit, we will have a CLE out in Snowbird in late April, like it's basically the last weekend or so that they are open, and it's a lot of fun. But let's focus on today. Very excited to have you all here. And tax deductible, thank you, Mike. Yeah, just tell your boss you need to go to a really important meeting in Salt Lake to help protect the company, and you might go, on the snow with us, have a little fun. So Mike, maybe I'll have each of you introduce yourself, starting with Mike.
Amazing and intelligent people, plus Mike, the ortho bro. So
Mike is we co-chair that meeting together. So
my name is Mike Pisetsky. I work at a company called SI Bone down here in the Valley in Santa Clara. I've been with the company for 10 years, a lawyer by training, and now oversee our administrative functions.
Hi, I'm Darcy Teobaldi. I've been in the Valley 4 years, coming on 5, and I've been in medtech about 20. Been interesting to see the evolution, especially now with AI coming into our space more and more.
So Bernie Shea, I'm principal at Simus Law, which is a very small law firm where I work with medical device startup companies doing GC, fractional GC and fractional patent. And I've been in the Valley for 20 years now, worked for J&J and multiple startup companies, including Cala Health, which I'll call out here as a great company. Anyway.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to hold on to this microphone because yeah, I'll be asking some questions here. We have an order here. We have 5 main questions with some sub questions, but I'm going to start with you, Darcy, because I was like, why don't we have Darcy first?
I thought I was lucky.
I put you right on the spot. So I do think this is a good one to start with, and it's around, we're talking about AI and how it can be used with how to help you with your healthcare compliance, which I would define as your AKS, and this is the land of acronyms, right? So AKS, anti-kickback statute, FCA, False Claims Act, because I won't be saying the whole word from here on out. But it's your healthcare compliance is, how your sales reps who, they get us all in the most trouble, right? The salespeople and the marketing people, they always want to sell more. And so they're going to be aggressive and they're not bashful about it, right? So what can we do when we're using AI to help with our compliance? I'll just read the question. What's been most effective in keeping compliance programs agile as digital tools like AI accelerate development cycles?
Yes, so I mean, that's an interesting undertaking. One of the things that our IP team, which Teresa Raymer is here with Recor Medical, as well as Gray Palmer, have done has been able to be in the room with our R&D team to make sure we understand what they're undertaking, and then go help them find a way to do it appropriately. For example, we have a dedicated server with an AI program on it that's outside of anything else within the company or going outside the company that they could, I'm going to say play with, but they can develop with. And that way, we're making sure that they're doing it in a captive space while they're still working outside. I don't know, what else, Mike, have you seen?
So I think the area of greatest success we've had, and I'll give a shout out to Claudia Cibrian here from SI Bone, our director of compliance. We implemented a tool that oversees T&E or helps us with oversight of our expense reimbursement, right? Huge areas was talked about earlier this morning of fraud and abuse risk is abuse of your expense system. So the tool scans every request for reimbursement, all the receipts that comes in. It's going to catch duplicates. It'll catch things outside our meal limits. We've been working with the model to develop more intelligence around what's reasonable with alcohol. And, you know, that paired with a little more incentive in the system that we put in. And we've seen just tremendous success in terms of shrinking our meal limit violation rates, getting our T&E under control. But I think even prior to AI, a lot of this is about data, collecting and distributing the right data. And we call it sort of democratization of data. And it's not just a compliance initiative, right? This is a finance and operations initiative, but I make sure to tack compliance onto that, whatever they're doing, and they're going to be the leaders along with IT kind of naturally, but making sure compliance is at the table. So as we build a data warehouse, make sure that compliance data is part of it, make sure that the reporting packages our sales leaders are getting include kind of compliance metrics. So all of this put together, I think we found a lot of success in that area.
This is a little bit, but reflecting what Darcy said, it's kind of the opposite, which is making sure that your people are not misusing AI or using AI that they really shouldn't be using. For the example that I have is one of my clients was working on a patent application, and I said, under no circumstances use AI for anything that you're doing on that. And that almost sent shockwaves through the company. And the response I got from the board, which is always interesting, was, hey, we're an advanced company. What are you doing to us? And so, you know, you have to actually walk people through what the risks really are.
Yeah. And your response was, I'm trying to protect you from losing your intellectual property, right?
Hey, Mark,
So that we have a company.
One more comment, kind of building on what you said. I mean, like I said, I've been here 20 years. I was at the beginning of open payments, right? And trying to convince companies that utilizing technology in the compliance space is the hardest sell that I've had. You know, I'm very fortunate here at Recor. When I joined, I said, I'm not joining unless I have a software to manage compliance, that we have some sophisticated ways to look at this. Because I came from Thermo Fisher and I wasn't able to sell them in 2020 on implementing that across the businesses. And I was handling the open payments report for 11 businesses. And I said, there's no way we can do this in an appropriate way, knowing AI was coming, unless we do that. So it's important for everyone to figure out how to find that budget.
No, that's a great point, because I don't know if it was you, Darcy, or the CFO, or whom was signing off on the open payments data, but someone has to attest to their accuracy and truthfulness. And so you want to have it all right, you know, and if you don't have tools, it's impossible. I feel like with open payments, it's having worked as a compliance officer on a contract basis and under secondment for many clients, it's like you're never going to get it 100% accurate. It's impossible. If you have hundreds of salespeople and clinical people and so on paying for things for doctors all the time, the likelihood of you getting 100% accuracy on your reporting, I think, is near zero. So it's about having really good tools that will at least help you boost your percentage from a 50% or 60 to hopefully in the 90s, right? But obviously tying payments to whether the sales rep gets reimbursed or not is the best practice, so that they have to submit their expenses and they won't get paid unless they give you the information you want. Lauren.
You were both referencing using specific. Don't see a button or a light. There we go. You both referenced using specific software. Would you mind sharing which software you're using or whatever systems you're using?
Sure. So the one we use is called AppZen for expense review.
How do you spell that?
AppZen.
It sounds peaceful. AppZen.
I don't think our sales reps find much zen in it.
That's great. And I think Darcy had another comment.
For the open payments, are actually all monitoring of our engagements with HCPs except for the actual expense payment, is we started with MedComply, which we felt was really flexible, but they did get purchased by MediSpend, which I had evaluated in my prior lives. And we're just in the process of moving over to some of the MediSpend platforms. But I do have to say that we couldn't have done it with the small team we had if we didn't have the software, and we couldn't do the reports that we bring out to the board and the management team of this is what's happening, this is how we're doing it. And that otherwise would have taken, 3 people, probably, a dedicated time. Excel spreadsheets don't get you there.
Yeah, no. And also you can't tell if hopefully this doesn't happen. I know it does happen. Occasionally the sales reps and the customer they're taking out, are they drinking their dinner or actually consuming it? I would think that maybe some of these tools will actually help you flag some of that. I don't know, Mike, if this app Zen does that.
It's not perfect, but yes, it does. And you can develop sort of custom modules or custom models within AppZen, and so tell it to look for checks, for example, where more than X% of the spend is on alcohol, and it does a pretty good job of identifying alcohol within the bill, or X dollars kind of per person. We do use MedComply as well as core data. I did sort of lump that into the AI pile. A lot of that is sort of process and reporting, but it's all part of an important stack, starting with, I think most companies use Concur for expense reimbursement. So it starts there, but then, what do you put on top of Concur?
And we're not being paid by these companies to endorse their products, but I do think it's a good plug for them, because especially if you have a lot of med tech companies now have drugs as well that they've, by acquisition or wherever it may be. And there's more stringent rules on drugs. I know we have a lot of med tech folks here, but like pharma recently said, they're starting to tell you what kind of ethanol, what kind you can buy, right? Like that it's all the same chemical, but they won't let you buy liquor. It's got to be wine or beer, and so it's kind of interesting. I'm sure these software, someone's probably, maybe AI can even help with that. I don't know, but I think we covered the next question. Maybe the second part to this was, how do you maintain control and defensibility without slowing innovation? I don't know if anyone has any other comments about that they'd like to share.
Do you have anything?
I would say your board's got to buy in. I mean, because if the board isn't bought in, you're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm curious for you, Darcy, you mentioned having sort of a controlled space for using AI, and I'm curious, we've yet to really reflect the use of AI within our QMS, right? We have a compliance policy outside of our QMS, and we do use these tools, but we're not an AI heavy kind of product. We don't use it extensively within our R&D, but we're aware of this issue, that if it does become a real part of our R&D process, eventually we'll need to address it within our SOPs and our quality system formally. And I'm curious how you've
We're just at the beginning stages as well of looking at, in our industry, where could we use AI in either a med tech device or an app or anything like that. So it's been more, let's explore it, let's see what we can do, but we haven't quite gotten there to where we would be needing to go down the QMS path, and we're on the QMS evolution. I would say, having been approved 2 years ago, we're looking at, okay, when's our next larger audits, and how can we make sure that we've built the right, as you said, basis for those, and then what's the next step above those. We do have a new gentleman in the R&D leadership who is a lot more tech savvy, I would say, than some of our other leaders that were working on what we've been working on for 15 years, right? And he's looking at additional ways to go about that, and really partnering with our quality team to determine what it is. And he was very aware of the data act that we were talking about earlier, and understanding that we've got to be thoughtful about that right off the bat.
Interesting. Back to the tools. I think I'll just add my own comment here. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation coming down the pike right now. I know that I was in DC a few weeks ago at a Fidley meeting, and Viva was on one of the panels there. Pleasanton company locally here that's been a tremendous success story. and they are having they're deploying AI in all kinds of uses for copy review. I understand that they have QMS functions, because I would think, like, we've talked a lot about quality and regulatory aspects today, that the complaint handling process could probably be optimized. And how does that inform CAPAs and things like that? There's just so much that's coming. The other part of my mind, it's kind of like I got the angel on one side thinking about how we're going to keep the patient safe, and then the devil's over here, like, how can the sales rep use this to sell more, right? Like, and I heard a story yesterday from a local GC where they had they deployed a technology. It was kind of in a sandbox still with Boston Consulting Group, and it was just still in a demo phase. But they asked it a question like, how can we sell more? How can this, because it was really intended to be like a buddy for the sales rep. Like, how can I plan my day the best? And it was like, oh, you're in Red Wing, Minnesota. You should go see Dr. Sullivan. And then they were like, why? Oh, because he hasn't bought for a while. Well, what can I do to help? And it said, you should offer a consulting agreement and take him out to a nice dinner. And it was like, oh, that's concerning. So the AI hadn't really, and the GC was like appalled. And it hadn't consumed their policies yet that said you're not supposed to bribe doctors. But so I think we're going to see a whole bunch of stuff coming down the pike on sales force optimization, I would assume.
Yes, Salesforce optimization. And we're working on, actually, you were supposed to make your SOP with regard to HCP interaction readable, like we were talking over here, readable by the average salesperson. Well, we're adding to it so we can train the internal AI that's going to be available to answer some of those questions more thoroughly, because we were afraid, what, we left this off, and we left this off. We've got to make that like a 50-page document. And that's, intimidating, because we're not going to be able to issue that to a salesperson to read. Yeah,
getting them to open an email is hard enough, let alone read a policy. Okay, I will head to the next question now. AI is a compliance catalyst. Mike, you were leading this one. How are AI systems changing the way? I feel like we maybe covered this already. Let's go to the next one. Regulatory and enforcement evolution, and Bernie leading this one. As regulators such as FDA, FTC, so again, acronyms, Federal Trade Commission, and the OIG, I think we all know them. They're the law enforcement for the Social Security Act, Medicare, et cetera. As they begin shaping regulatory and enforcement practices around AI, how do you see those expectations evolving?
So I'll just start with a little insight into how Mark reached the pinnacle of his profession and how he got his own law firm. A couple of days ago, we were going over the questions that everybody was supposed to handle, and there was a whole list of them. And I sent one in and I said, hey, I'd really like to hear about this. This is really of interest to me. I'd like to know more. And so we get the list of questions we're supposed to answer back. And the question that I had said I wanted to know more about was word for word there, but I was leading the discussion. So this is obviously a way of.
I'm blaming this on AI because it did help me prepare these questions, and so do you have any thoughts? So you want to know my thoughts on this one, maybe is what you're saying.
I do. I'll throw out my thoughts just from a GC standpoint. I think there's two questions that are going to come up. One is for all of these different entities and uses of AI is, one, are you using the tools that are available to be able to proactively spot issues? And two, are you validating those tools? And I think that leads to a very difficult position, because I think, at least in the interim, it means that your compliance function is going to become bigger rather than smaller, because you're going to be getting stuff in real time that you're going to have to react to. And you're going to have to also be able to show the FDA, OG, whoever comes in, that you were reacting properly to what the AI was telling you. So you have to validate that the information you're getting from the AI is there. So I would say that you're going to have to do two things basically immediately. One is partner with your IT group and go looking for what the tools are that are going to be available. And number two, go to your board and say, this is not going to be a trivial issue, and AI is not going to come in and make this cheaper or easier, it's probably going to make it harder and more expensive in the long run.
Mike has some comments.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really important points in there. And it sort of reminds me, started going down this road for real this year. And one of the first things we did is formed an AI committee. And we had our most kind of senior executives and all of the kind of concerned or relevant stakeholders at the table. I think, IT, HR is actually quite important, as well as obviously legal and regulatory, among others. So getting a cross-functional kind of view and governance of the process. Certain of our stakeholders, CFO, sort of look at this and say, great, we can automate, non-revenue generating functions, regulatory, we'll automate PMR. And I think to your point, it's actually quite the opposite, right? What we found is that these AI tools are great at generating content that needs review and oversight, right? So you still have the human layer overseeing what it creates, but what it's actually ought to be replacing is marketing, right? Voluminous, sort of questionable reliability content. That's where to go is the AI model. Then you need the human layer to get it right.
Yeah, no, I think you have to have that human in the loop, and that was something that the person from Viva talked a lot about. Was you really need a person involved in interpreting what AI is telling you, because I know that we have clients that will tell us we have to use it. They will ask us about how we are using AI in our annual review with them, and because they see it the same way we do, frankly. It's a great benefit for making someone that knows what they're doing more efficient, so that if I remember when it first came out, there was a case I was responding to for, I knew it existed and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I looked through our files and I used, Microsoft's tech to try and find it. And I looked for, I don't know, 15 minutes, couldn't find it, punched it in AI and it came up immediately, so there's a great use for it, but you have to have that human in the loop. And what Viva said as well is they know that because this was a Fidley's ad promo conference, which is obviously focused on advertising, promotion, review, which is massive in the drug space compared to the device space. And they were like, the people on these teams won't use it if they think their job is going to be eliminated, for one thing. So they were really seeking buy-in from these committees. And yes, go ahead.
So how do you see the government using it then?
I see the government, we already see them using it to investigate what they see as fraud. So they're going through the Sunshine data. That's not new. They have stated that at meetings from the podium that they are using AI to, for example, digest the Sunshine data, and you can line that up against the prescription and service billings and whatnot. This is all it was made years ago. It was all made public, so you can, you pay companies money to go in and chop the data up for you and make it clean, but it's all out there. And as a former product manager, I would pay for those data, and I don't know what they're doing now because I'm not buying them, but so you can look at prescribing behavior and compare it to the payment data. Are they consultants? Are they accepting grants? Are they doing research? And so that, obviously, we know that KOLs are all very busy, and those are the ones that are, some of the ones I hired when I was a product manager, I didn't know if they ever slept. I'd see them at a meeting and ask them to do something, and I'd get it on like Friday night, the next day or something. You're like, so they are kind of workaholics, a lot of the KOLs. And so it makes sense that they're going to receive the biggest payments on open payments, and that they are probably using a lot of products that they're ultimately getting, have consulting gigs with, because they also have incredibly busy practices, many of them. So a couple of comments on that point, how I think the government will use it. I also think that FDA is arguably, I would love to hear Nate's thoughts on this and Amanda's, but they came out with, we're going to use AI to start to do our jobs, and there was really very, I think, little guidance around it or rigor in terms of how they were going to use data to review drug submissions, for example, and then what happens to those data? going to be lost, or are they, can people access them all corners of the planet if you put it in this model? Do we have confidence in FDA's model? Is it closed, or where do those data go? Because they're worth a lot of money.
And what about the hallucinations that come from it?
The hallucinations.
Yeah, you still need the human factor there.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm hoping still exists.
Yeah, and to that point, we have a case work with a client within federal court, and this plaintiff's lawyer who was misusing terms of art about the Sunshine Act was citing a case to support his position from 2012. And I'm like, okay, that law didn't go into effect until August 1st, 2011. So how are you citing or 2013, excuse me, citing a case from 2012 about it? But okay. All right. So let's go to the next question here. Actually, yeah. Okay. So AI meets fraud and abuse law. How might AI-driven decision support pricing algorithms, something Amanda touched on earlier, and patient engagement tools trigger anti-kickback statute or False Claims Act exposure in unexpected ways?
Well, I think your example, Mark, of the BCG initiative or tool is a great example. AI, you can't explain often the results you're getting. And what's key to these laws, the False Claims Act, the anti-kickback statute, is they're intent-based statutes, right? So if you get an answer or a suggestion and you can't explain the intent, or the intent is generate more revenue, you're starting from a bad place, right? So we haven't seen, in our company, these kind of uses like pricing strategy yet. Maybe that's coming, but again, I think the theme is these tools need human oversight. They're super useful, and I'll give one example where I think we found great effect within legal and compliance is just policy review and updating, right? Feed your policies to several different tools and compare the results, but then take what it gives you and have a human kind of reintegrate and update the policy. It will pop issues that a human might have missed, but then you need the human to actually update the policy.
I completely agree. I mean, we can't leave it on its own. I would also say, like, in the patient engagement side, you're going to build some sort of, response, right, to your average FAQs, but you have to be thoughtful about where will that response, what will be the next question and who will be managing that next question. So you can utilize it, but you also still have to have the oversight available. And those are the things that we're trying to build into our next patient engagement tools.
I think when you're in the reimbursement in Medicare, Medicaid area, there's probably a lot of opportunity for the government to go in and look at the prescriptions and how the devices are being used and how it's being, if there's a pattern of prescription language that's being used. So, if your salespeople are saying, doc, if you prescribe it this way, we know you'll get reimbursement. If you prescribe it this way, they won't. And I think there's probably an enforcement activity will come up around that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, Bernie. And I think that was another thing that Amanda had touched on earlier on the agenda for the government for the OIG is they're aware, it's in some ways I look at, I often say old tricks are the best tricks, right? Like, and you see behavior I know we have a lot of compliance officers in the room. The same things that I've seen in 1999 when I entered this industry, I see now. And I'm like, how are you so dumb that you did this to the sales reps? And I can throw a lot of shade at them because I worked in commercial roles for the first 10 years of my career. But, and the same goes for this coding aspects. I mean, there was I think it was Insys that was, in order to get prescribed, I'll finish sentence. I think it was Insys whose sales reps were just filling out these prior auth forms and whatnot for drugs that they had. And I think it was for treating cancer, pain associated with cancer, if I remember right. And they did some of the review on them. Again, I'm not an expert on this case. I haven't read it for a while, but they didn't always have cancer, the patients. The reps were just filling that part in, and so I would be really careful if you're using AI to support your patient's access to your therapy, whether it's a drug or a device, to make sure that the algorithm isn't just filling out the form so that Aetna or whomever pays for your drug or device, because that's called a false claim. If they don't indeed have cancer, and you're trying to get the government to pay, or a private payer for that matter, to pay for the drug to treat cancer or pain associated with it, well, then that is like the definition of a false claim, isn't it? So I think, Bernie, that's an excellent point, where you have to really vet these tools to make sure that they work. And I've had several clients where there's access issues with new technologies, right? If you're going to get an X-ray this afternoon, that's been around a while, not really an access issue for a patient. But if you have some PMA device or NDA drug, it hasn't existed, so no one wants to pay for it until everybody agrees that it works. And so it's very tempting to deploy tools and work with vendors that will tell you this is going to help you solve that issue that you have with access. And if it's really cheap, that's a red flag. Like, I've reviewed some of these with Paul and others on our team. And if it's like, wow, it's only $5 a prior authorization, it's like, well, that's because a computer is doing everything. There's no human involved. And they have no, privacy program or compliance program. So you really have to be careful with those. Any other comments on that?
I mean, I think a lot of it goes to what's the role you put it in, right? We shouldn't be filling out medical necessity or writing medical necessity justification, period, whether or not it's a computer or a human. So are you putting the AI tool in the right role, right? So we have an AI, or we have an initiative to use sort of AI tools within our reimbursement function, but you got to be very careful about the role you put it in. So they can certainly review the patient file, kind of flag areas, but at the end of the day, the letter has to go back to the doctor, and the physician has to, or the physician's office has to draft it and sign it. So we can help, and we can have the AI tool parse a 500-page medical record, but at the end of the day, neither we nor an AI tool that we deploy can be in that role.
That's a really important point that Mike's making. Tracy's Lamb, I have 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes left. If there's any audience questions, we'd love to take them. We have more, probably some that Bernie asked me about that he wanted to know the answer to. But in all seriousness, we've designed and worked with clients. We've gone in and audit these programs, and we often find it's like, oh yeah, of course we're submitting it for the customer, and yeah, we're logging into their system and doing it for them, and it's like, well, time out. If anything's wrong here, you are, every time you do that, potentially incriminating yourself. So you want to be really careful with those aspects. But and I'll just say one last thing about it, because I've asked Mayor Reardon about this one-on-one at conferences where I've said, are you still allowing reimbursement support? Because you can read the AdvaMed code, and it's very clear. It says you can. And Amanda sat on the working group to draft that section of the code. And Amanda, I think there's some people, I think Allison Shuren, Dr. Shuren's wife, was on that committee with you. And there were some views on that committee that said we shouldn't do this. And there were other views that said we should. And I think you all decided not to change it. But it's a controversial topic. It's one of high risk, because you have, and again, what I'm describing is helping the patient get access to that drug or device when it's very expensive. And how do you ease that pain for the provider? And one of the ways is you're going to help the patient get access through these tools, right? But be careful with those tools, because they invoke FDA, HIPAA, AKS, FCA issues, all of them, so they're really high risk. But I asked Mary, is this still okay? And her response was basically exactly what AdvaMed said. As long as it's not tantamount to inducement, it's fine. It's like, okay.
But I think one of the things that you're speaking to is you need to have the other controls in your company. Like how do you review vendors? How do you review the contracts? How do you review IT tools that your vendor is going to use? And that's something that is hard when you're a startup and doesn't have a procurement department to kind of flag it. So it ends up in the legal team, in which we say, hey, wait a minute, you want to contract with these people? Or we've looked through our vendor data to try to keep an eye on it. And we find, hey, maybe you're not using the right vendor there, or you didn't come to legal to make sure that we've identified all of the potential risks with this particular project. And sometimes you end up having to say, let's slow down, let me give you a speed bump, and let's go back and take a look at the intent and what exactly are you trying to do. But I think AI is only going to speed up those services coming to market, and you have to be mindful of your procurement path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've like scratched the surface on what's coming in terms of commercial use of AI and how that's going to gain them more sales. Like, for example, GEO. There's SEO, right? That's kind of like old fashioned now. Sales optimization engine, search engine. Thank you. And now it's generative engine optimization, which is for LLM models. And so you keep an eye on your people, because they'll probably be starting to put things out, and it only reads HTML, and it likes Reddit a lot, like ChatGPT and whatnot. So if they say, well, we're posting things to Reddit about our competitors' products and our products, all of that needs to be obviously reviewed. And that's happening right now. That's where the drug industry is going. So it's, Google right now, they're saying, oh, you're going to have to break it up because you have a monopoly. They're like, we don't care. This is old tech. Nobody who Googles anymore. Once you get bit by ChatGPT, which by the way is destroying the planet apparently because it's creating heat and using tons of energy, you'll stop using Google because it's way less efficient. ChatGPT actually answers your question. There's no ads, but I'm sure that will change with their multi-trillion-dollar public offering, or maybe it's not multi. I think it's going to be the biggest public offering ever next year for OpenAI. So I was going to ask you, Bernie, because you've got some connections in the Valley here. I know that. Any comments or questions from the audience? I think we're pretty much at time. Maybe one more. Any questions, comments, or we want to have lunch? All right, well, please join me in give me a round of applause for the panel here. Thank you. And